that will be alphabetical. So Mr. Reader, you'll be given the opening statement. You'll have 90 seconds to answer each question. And Mitch has this fancy little 15-second marker that he'll hold up when you're getting close. And then he'll have a stop sign when it's time to stop. So you'll know what your 90 seconds are or when they're coming close. And at the end, we will have a 2-minute closing statement. And that'll wrap it up. The questions will be rotated. So again, opening statement will be yours, Mr. Reader, as well the closing statement. And the questions will alter back and forth between Mr. Reader and Mr. Valancourt. So that's how this is going to work. This is being live streamed, as was the 47th House race, and that seemed to go off pretty good. So hopefully we'll have no issues on this one. So that said, I just want to say this. My hope as a member of the Livingston County Republican Party is that once the dust settles on this thing and we all wake up August 5th rather, and we're either excited or we're disappointed, that we all get behind the candidate, not just in this race, but the candidate who prevails, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we keep Livingston County Republican and march on to help our president get reelected. So, anxiety is at an all-time high. Politics is kind of a blood sport, can get a little nasty, but at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, and we got to set all that aside when it's all said and done. So all that being said, I think I covered all the ground rules and everything that I needed to do. So with that, Mr. Reader, I yield the floor for a 3-minute opening.
My name is Dave Reader, and I'm asking for your vote on August the 4th in the Republican primary. I often get asked, why are you running? I left at what should have been the pinnacle of my judicial career because I was tired of seeing the judicial system here getting trashed. Through my efforts, I was able to clean up the courthouse with Judge Brennan, and with the time clock ticking, I knew I had a very small window to complete the process to clean up the prosecutor's office as well, as I was required to leave my judicial office 1 year before the filing deadline. With the filing of Judge Brennan's divorce in December of 2016, a wealth of information poured forth from witnesses' testimony regarding the close, personal, and pervasive relationship between Judge Brennan, Detective Furlong, and members of Mr. Valancourt's own office. We were told of romantic involvement and other sordid affairs that I will not repeat here. We learned of the extensive contact between Judge Brennan and Detective Furlong even during the Kowalski trial, contact that was obviously inappropriate. At the start of the Kowalski trial in January of 2013, I held a hearing as chief judge on the recusal of Judge Brennan from the case. Mr. Valancourt appeared in the courtroom on that motion. I asked him if he knew of any facts to support a recusal, and none were provided. The answer went something like, none on the record. We now know that he knew. He knew. Detective Furlong's testimony under a grant of immunity from the Attorney General, as well as the testimony of other witnesses in the divorce trial, revealed the true state of affairs. Once caught, Valancourt agreed to a new trial, but only after a lengthy delay. I know I can restore honesty and integrity to the prosecutor's office if given the chance. Another reason for my running has to do with the specialty courts, comprised of the Veterans, Mental Health, Juvenile, Adult Drug, and Sobriety Court. Every specialty court there was either created or expanded under my leadership. I created the grant department at the court, which provides the necessary support so those programs can exist. I believe in them because they save lives and families. I can tell you from my personal experience as chief judge that our current prosecutor does not fully support these programs and is not fully vested in them. Just showing up is not participation. We need a prosecutor that will not unduly restrict entry into these programs, and a prosecutor who will provide prosecutorial incentives for those who successfully complete those programs. While Mr. Valancourt's peers around the state provide such incentives, he does not. I know we can do better. There's more that I could say, but time is limited. And again, I'm asking for your vote on August the 4th.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Valancourt, 3-minute opening.
Thanks, Mike. Most of you in the party know me. You know my background, you know my experience. I've been on the county executive committee for 20 years, long before I was first elected. So instead of taking a typical opening statement introducing myself, I'm going to take this time to talk about Teresa Brennan and the Kowalski case. Because everyone knows that on the very eve of trial, the prosecutor's office received a fax letter from a local attorney about Judge Brennan and one of the officers, Sean Furlong. It was long on rumors and innuendo and short on detail. As soon as the letter hit, we immediately called Kowalski's attorney, told him everything I knew, that it was well known that Furlong and Brennan were friends and that they socialized together. And I told him of the rumors that had been swirling around the legal community as well, that maybe it was more than a friendship. But to suggest that I knew more is simply false. Everyone knew they were friends. Even Dave Reeder said on the record, I know they're friends, and he said it wasn't a problem. There was one person who could answer whether or not she could be impartial and who knew all the facts, and that was the judge. So the parties went right to the source, and she said in court that they were just friends and she could be impartial. Now it's important to remember the context because this case had been pending for years. This wasn't even the first trial date. It was up for trial the previous month. Yet this letter isn't sent until the very eve of trial, full of speculation. Now clearly there's a history here by the lawyer, prior complaints, judicial tenure filings, and efforts to force the judge off other cases. And this wasn't the first judge that this attorney had gone after either. Even Dave Reeder was skeptical of the motives behind the letter written by his former law partner and questioned the extreme last-minute timing. He even apologized to the defendant that it was so late. This was a last-minute issue that didn't need to be a last-minute issue, and it did a disservice to everyone. And when it came out during her divorce case in late January of 2016 that more was going on, I immediately did 4 things. I contacted the JTC and filed a complaint, a request to investigate. Dave Reeder didn't do that. I contacted the state police, requested a criminal investigation of Brennan and Furlong. Dave Reeder didn't do that. I contacted the Attorney General's office so they knew that they would be reviewing any criminal referrals arising out of this, and that they did. I contacted the defense attorney, made sure that they knew everything was going on, and I got them all the information so they could review it independently. Then took the Judicial Tenure Commission 1.5 years to do its investigation. I did everything that could have been done and should have been done. To simply keep repeating the shameless lie he knew is trying to rewrite history for a political agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And sticking with the rotation, Mr. Reeder, we're going to be to you with the first question. And that first question is, some watching this forum may not know the actual duties and job description of their county prosecutor. Please provide any important information you think would be helpful.
The county prosecutor is the chief law enforcement officer in the county, and as such is charged with seeing that justice is done in the county with reference to any criminal charges that are presented. A prosecutor would review with the various liaison officers from the various police departments within the county, requests for criminal charges, make decisions regarding those, and then authorize the charges. The prosecutor is also charged with assisting victims, has a victim officer within the office who assists with the Victims' Rights Act, and is in charge of putting together the cases together with the investigating officers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Valancourt, the question again.
Well, the primary function of the prosecutor is prosecuting all criminal cases, any crime that occurs in Livingston County, felony, misdemeanor committed by an adult or juvenile. There's no caseload limit. Anything that happens here is ours. Primary function is warrant review. That's one of the key functions that we do to determine after an investigation whether there's sufficient evidence to justify charges and the legal basis for those charges. We also prosecute all juvenile delinquency cases, abuse neglect cases. We work in conjunction with DHHS, Health and Human Services, regarding law enforcement referrals. We're the coordinator of the CARE project, which means any case where there's an allegation of child sexual abuse or child abuse, we coordinate that process to ensure an interview process that occurs that's fair and impartial. We're on call 24/7 to police. We help with police with search warrants any time of day or night. We work in the specialty courts. We play a key role there. We're the gatekeeper. We ensure that people are eligible and are appropriate candidates for it. We prosecute personal protection order violations. We meet frequently with the chiefs of police, with detectives. We review every child death case that occurs in the county. We have a wide-ranging duties, but our primary function is protecting public safety with the prosecution and enforcement of criminal laws.
Okay, thank you. And right back at you with this question, Mr. Valancourt, and it is, do you think the actions of your staff should fairly be a reflection of your own policies and ethics?
Yes, they should. I mean, as the prosecutor, I set the policies that govern how our cases are resolved, because it's important that every individual is treated equally, that no one gets any special treatment based on who they are, who their defense attorney is, or who they might know. So that's why we do have consistent policies that govern how cases are to be resolved, what pleas to offer, what sentence considerations to offer. But these are policies that are written, they're not written in stone, they're written on paper. And so there's always flexibility to assess the individual case to determine if maybe something different should be done. For example, I recall one case involving a drunk driving charge where the victim had been violently raped and had a substance abuse issues. So that was taken into account in determining how to address that. So we focus on that, making sure we treat everybody equally. We focus on training to make sure all of my prosecutors are trained and well-versed in the latest ethics, latest court rules, latest judicial opinions, and latest best practices across the state to ensure that my office is among the best trained in the state. In fact, our office is well respected across the state. Prosecutors from other counties constantly contact our office for assistance and guidance on cases. So I'm proud of what my office does. I think we do a great job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Reader, the question again, do you think the actions of your staff should be fairly a reflection of your policies and ethics?
Absolutely. Harry S. Truman had on his desk a motto that said, "The buck stops here." And when the boss finds out that inappropriate conduct is happening within the office, it's up to the boss to take appropriate action. If they don't, shame on them.
Okay,
That's
thank
it.
you. Give me a minute to get the unmute. And right back at you, Mr. Reader, with the next question. What are the 3 most significant issues and or challenges facing the Livingston County Prosecutor's Office?
Well, the first is cleaning it up and holding both the prosecutor and the assistant prosecutors accountable for what's happened over the last 6 years. The second has to do really with the COVID issue and the technology challenges. There's a backlog that has been created. There's a real backlog in the family support unit that the prosecutor's office has. The prosecutor that's assigned there hasn't been doing the work. And beyond that is going to be the budgetary issues that are going to hit this county because of the money that's being passed out at the federal level, the state level. And it's surely going to come back, and it did before with grant money from the state, block grants back to the community, and it's going to affect us again. I expect some kind of request from Lansing for additional money, which means there's going to be less money for the county. So those are the 3.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Valancourt, what are the 3 most significant issues and or challenges facing the Livingston County Prosecutor's Office?
I'm not sure where he gets his information or his misinformation about the Family Support Office. They are up to speed in handling their caseload. When the Supreme Court shut down all the civil cases due to COVID, they were furloughed like a lot of other county employees. But as cases came up and needed to be handled, the work got done. The continued priorities for our office is our focus, primary focus is on the continuing protection of public safety by prioritizing violent offenders, drunk drivers, domestic violence, and sexual assault. Those are the priorities for any prosecutor's office. We've always been a leader in technology, so I want to continue working to greatly use that to make it more efficient in prosecuting criminal cases, but we need to make sure that victims don't get forgotten in that process. Another priority that we're going to be seeing starting next year is raise the age goes into effect, which moves juveniles, or which moves 17-year-olds from the adult system into the juvenile system. So that's going to add some significant cases, some serious cases and important cases that are going to move into the juvenile system. So we're going to need to make sure that there's the appropriate resources so that those individuals aren't graduating into the adult process. So those, I think, are among the priorities that we're going to be focusing on next year.
Okay, thank you. And according to my list here, we're right back with you. So, Mr. Valancourt, what is your view on the current criminal justice system in Michigan, and what do you believe should be the goal of our justice system?
Well, I think by and large, the criminal justice system functions well in Michigan, but clearly there are some areas where there can be changes. They're looking at pretrial bond reform. You know, that's a worthwhile area to look at, but you need to remember you can't have one size fits all and just look at an individual's offense and say, well, this is what the bond conditions could be, because there's a wide variety of circumstances where maybe somebody's shoplifting a weapon because they want to use it against somebody. Well, that presents a different individual than somebody that's just conducting, a regular shoplifting. There's a lot of things where we have worked to improve the criminal justice system. For example, minor in possession of alcohol used to be a misdemeanor. I worked with the legislature to change it to civil infraction so our youth aren't burdened by a criminal conviction when they're applying for college. We've worked to expand youthful trainee status where youthful offenders get the opportunity to have a clean record. Used to be they could only get it till 21. I worked to expand that to age 24. We've worked to eliminate mandatory prison sentences for certain drug crimes, but still retain serious penalties for those offenses that place the public at risk. There's a lot that's happening in criminal justice reform. Prosecutors are at the table working with stakeholders in the courts and the legislature to ensure that reform is actually a positive change and not change just for the sake of change.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Reeder, what is your view on the current criminal justice system in Michigan, and what do you believe should be the goal of our justice system?
Well, the first goal of the justice system is to protect the people and to have laws that protect the people, to keep people safe. Beyond that, a prosecutor would work with the various pillars of the judicial system, which include legislators, local commissioners, various police agencies, to focus on the issues that are problematic at that time. So there is an opiate issue, problem that has existed, has caused numerous deaths and grief within our community. The court, together with the prosecutor's office, Mr. Valancourt's office was involved as well, moved for an education program. There should be, and I think it's important for there to be a focus on rehabilitation. One of the comments that I saw online with our local, about our local jail was that, hey, we built this big, beautiful jail and it's not full. And my comment on that was because of the specialty court programming that we put together, we created a lot of space. So I think a focus should be on rehabilitation to save money for the community. 90 seconds goes quick.
I must have just muted myself. Sorry about that. Yes, it does. And this question is right back at you, Mr. Reader. What is your position on the automatic expungement bill pending in the legislature, and why?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with the bill. As far as automatic expungement, I think that from what I saw from the Judiciary Committee, they were talking about some 10-year bills, but you know, it's I just don't know. I just don't know, to be truthful with you. I'm not familiar with the legislation for automatic expungement. I know that, you know, I've had people that have come into my courtroom that have asked to have their record wiped cleaned, and they had 2 or more felonies, which would not make them qualify. And I think part of the bill that's there, at least what I read, would allow for expungement in cases where there were 2 or more felonies in certain circumstances. This was a guy that had a nonviolent felony, but he couldn't go on school trips with his 10-year-old daughter. And so I think in certain circumstances, the felonies that we wrap around people are harsh, and maybe a way to make them go away would probably be a good idea. I know for that 42-year-old guy with his 10-year-old daughter, I sure wish I was able to wipe it clean so he could go on the school trips, because he was leading an exemplary life.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Valancourt, what is your?
Yes.
If you're ready, go ahead.
I'm ready. Expungements has been a huge issue in this state, a big issue in Lansing. There have been hearings in front of the House and the Senate, and I testified before the legislature on these proposals that have attracted a lot of attention across the country, not just in Michigan. So this is a big issue, and I'm a little surprised that my opponent is unfamiliar with it. Among the bills that we've been working to support is to expand expungements so that you're not limited to just one felony that you can get expunged. You can get it even if you have multiple felonies or even a number of misdemeanors. There have been proposals that shorten some of the time period, and we prosecutors have worked to support a number of those bills. But the automatic expungement bill is a real problem, because what it is it's essentially a computer program that you plug in the offense that you're convicted of and the date that you were convicted, and if nothing else shows up, you automatically get the expungement. It doesn't matter what the victim might think. It doesn't matter whether you owe restitution. So if you've been convicted of an embezzlement crime and you owe $1 million in restitution, and enough time goes by, you can automatically get it expunged. There's no court hearing. The judge doesn't get involved. The prosecutor doesn't have an opportunity to speak. The victim doesn't get an opportunity to speak. We've supported a bulk of the other expungement bills because it gives the judge, the judiciary, the opportunity to hear the case and listen to the victim, listen to the prosecutor, and make an assessment as to whether public safety is served by expungement.
Okay, thank you. And this one's right back at you, Mr. Valancourt. Working relationship with law enforcement and the willingness to be vocal about supporting them, how important is that? This is a 2-part question, I should have said. How important is that to you? And how important are they to make sure your job is successful?
Well, I think it's critical to have an open and strong working relationship with law enforcement, because it works both ways. It's important that law enforcement have confidence in the ability of their prosecutors, so that when they do the investigation on a complicated case, they know that it's going to be handled well and with the degree of expertise that's required. And it's important for prosecutors to have confidence in their officers that when there are issues, that there can be frank discussions about them. So we're very fortunate that we've got a dedicated group of law enforcement that we work well together. And that allows for frank conversations about maybe weaknesses in a case or weaknesses in an investigation, or other issues that might arise that need to be determined before charges are filed. The importance of a strong relationship is also because law enforcement has a duty to let prosecutors know if there are credibility issues involving officers, because we disclose that to defendants. And our police chiefs fortunately have a strong working relationship with me and my office, that they understand the importance of that duty and they comply with it. And we have frank conversations about whether something is of that kind of nature or not. So we enjoy a strong working relationship, and I'm fortunate to have the support of the chiefs of police in Livingston County and a significant number of the officers and law enforcement in our community.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Reader, again, a two-part question. Working relationship with law enforcement and the willingness to be vocal about supporting them, how important is that to you? And how important are they in making sure your job is successful?
You know, working with law enforcement, you can't get the job done as a prosecutor if you don't have a good relationship with the various departments across the county. It's as simple as that. You need a strong working relationship with law enforcement, and that's built up through communication and trust, open, honest, fair communication that's going back and forth. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with everything that an individual officer or agency brings in, but you need to be able to sit down with them and review the information that's being brought in, give your honest opinion, and then work with them to develop the case, if you have it, to aid a victim if there is a victim in the case, and to make sure that justice is done. So the prosecutor needs to stay informed, and also to maintain that relationship of communication and trust.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Reader, right back at you with this one. And this is the last question, by the way, and then it'll be a 2-minute closing. This question is, what should a county prosecutor do to guard against racism, favoritism, or any form of discrimination in prosecutorial decisions and sentencing requests?
Well, the prosecutor really needs to be colorblind, but aware of the existence of racism within the community. So the prosecutor needs to make sure that justice is done in every case. Injustice anywhere means justice doesn't exist. So the prosecutor needs to just make sure that a case is evaluated on its merits. If there's a hint or a taint that something inappropriate is going on, then the prosecutor's job is to, maybe contact the boss, because the buck stops there, but to investigate a little bit further to make sure that things are handled appropriately. So really, it's just doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, and making sure that justice is colorblind.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Valancourt, same question. What should a county prosecutor do to guard against racism, favoritism, or any form of discrimination in prosecutorial decisions and sentencing requests?
Well, I think it's true. You have to be colorblind. You don't consider, race or any other characteristic of an individual, and that's something we don't do. And we investigate and review a number of cases involving either minority defendants, minority witnesses, people with different gender identifications, and so we strive every day to be focused simply on the case and the merits of the individual case, the interests of the victim, and the interests of the community. We ensure against favoritism by making sure that we handle similar cases similarly, so that people aren't treated differently based on who they are or where they come from or who their lawyer is or who they know. That every case is judged on the merits, on the strengths and the weaknesses of it, and looking at what best serves justice for the victim and justice for the community.
Okay, thank you. And so now our closing, and you got 2 minutes, and this goes back to Mr. Reader. 2-minute closing.
Just going back to Judge Brennan, in February of 2017, I testified that Judge Brennan, in her divorce trial, that I had heard through a deputy, a bailiff assigned to the Brighton court, that she was wiping her cell phone, or trying to wipe her cell phone, and soliciting advice from her staff on how to do so. That transcript was later supplied to Mr. Valancourt, and he did nothing with it. He didn't seek an investigatory subpoena. He didn't authorize a search warrant. To my knowledge, nothing was done with that. Then in May of 17, I learned that she was trying to wipe her computers. I made a call to the state police. They executed a search warrant that day and came to the courthouse, seized all the computer equipment, which ultimately resulted in her removal from office and her plea to a felony. As your prosecutor, I will seek justice for all, and I will seek justice for victims and advocate their interests. I will help them seek out appropriate available assistance. I will seek justice for those accused of a crime, that they receive a fair and impartial trial. And I also seek justice for those convicted of a crime and approve their entry into mental health, drug, and veteran court programming to save their lives and the lives of their families. I will not unduly restrict entry into these programs, and I will promote prosecutorial incentives. Finally, I will seek justice against those in powerful positions who may have broken the law, and there will be no special treatment for those in high power.
Thank you. And Mr. Valancourt, it's up to you for a 2-minute closing.
Okay, quick rejoinder. Gee, Dave, you never called me about any of this stuff, but you all, but that's more misinformation. And you also knew that the Attorney General's office was involved and was handling any aspects of the investigation involving Teresa Brennan. But, you're going to say what you're going to say. The independence of the prosecutor's office is crucial to our criminal justice system, especially here in Livingston County. The independence of the prosecutor's office is threatened if the prosecutor's office is controlled by the judges, because only the prosecutor is in a position to stand up for you. What Dave Reader did threatens that independence. His sudden and abrupt resignation from the bench in the middle of his term allowed Governor Whitmer to appoint his replacement, and Democrats now have appointed 3 of Livingston County's 6 judges. And what's especially important is not just that he gave a seat to Governor Whitmer to fill, it has a lasting effect that many people don't realize. The circuit judges control appointments for the county clerk and the prosecutor if there's ever a vacancy. So if Dave Reader would be elected prosecutor and decide to resign in the middle of his term again, then the Democrats who control the circuit bench will get to make that appointment. The same thing would happen if there was a vacancy in the county clerk's office. Reader's resignation flipped control of the circuit bench from 2-to-1 Republican to 2-to-1 Democrat. He could have easily resigned in time to allow the Republican governor to make the appointment, like Judge Geddes did, but he chose not to do so. If I'm reelected, I won't resign early and let the judges pick your prosecutor, because they pick someone that serves their interests, not yours. And I work for you, not the judges. That's what I've done for the last 8 years and will continue to do for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Fellas, I'm going to turn it back over to Joe Riker, but before I do that, I just want to say thank you for your participation in tonight's forum, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to moderate and ask the questions. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank the candidates for participating, and our moderator, Sheriff Mike Murphy, and all the viewers for watching. Don't forget to watch the Commissioner candidate forums, which will be available tomorrow at 5 p.m. or after 5 p.m. Also, we do have a yard sign pickup event for John James and President Trump tomorrow from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the D19 Park and Ride off of I-96. Look forward to seeing you there. Take care, everybody.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.